Hello, and welcome to the Adventures in Arting podcast, where we analyze, explore, and celebrate the creative journey. My name is Julie Fei-Fan Balzer, and I am a working artist living outside of Boston. I've been hosting this podcast with my super special co-host and my mom, Eileen Balzer, since 2012. Hi, Mom.
Hello, Julie.
So I want to let you know before we start that I am teaching a class at my home studio here outside of Boston. It's called Art Alchemy, Exploring Golden Brand Paints and Mediums. That's June 23rd through 25th. So treat yourself is the theme here. So meet new art friends, spend a long weekend being pampered, and expand your creative boundaries at an in-person class. So you can check that out at juliebalzer.com. So today's episode is one of two. We are talking about art in bloom. This is part one. So in case you don't know, Mom and I snuck into the museum the night before Art in Bloom opened. Art in Bloom is an annual event at the Museum of Fine Arts. The MFA is what we call it here in Boston. It's always one of my favorite events of the year. It usually always happens at the end of April. So essentially, the MFA invented the Art in Bloom idea in 1976. Since then, many other museums have taken up the idea, and it's a good one. And there might be a museum near you that does it. I have been to, I think, two other museums during their Art in Bloom period, and it's really nice. So here's the fancy write-up about it. Visitors are treated to a sensory experience as they wander through the galleries adorned with imaginative floral interpretations. The captivating aromas of freshly cut blossoms fill the air, while the visual delight of artfully arranged blooms against the backdrop of world-class art stirs the imagination. The juxtaposition of natural elements with centuries-old masterpieces creates a dialogue that transcends time and medium, inviting visitors to see art from a fresh perspective. You must read it in that voice, by the way. It's also an invitation for selfies galore and just a ton of photos. And this is really why we went the night before, because if you go during the Art in Bloom experience, you're basically like on top of 1,000 people, and it's a lot, right? So here you go. We took a ton of pictures, and if you are listening to this podcast, I'll have all the pictures in a slideshow for you to see on the show page. If you are watching this on YouTube, but then you don't need to go anywhere, you're going to be able to see all the pictures. And we will try to describe, obviously, everything that we're looking at because we're aware it's a podcast. So the main feature of Art in Bloom is the collaboration between floral designers and the museum curators. Like essentially what happens is the garden club or the floral designer is assigned. I did ask about this one year. They're assigned an artwork and they have to create some sort of floral arrangement inspired by it. And then the floral arrangement is placed next to its corresponding artwork. And it's supposed to really create a conversation between the two art forms. Now, Mom and I will talk a little bit about what our expectations are of these floral pieces. And there are lots of fun conversations to be had with other people, with strangers. I talk to more people during Art in Bloom, more strangers than I do normally. People are sort of more open. I will say just generationally, I have noticed that older people are totally willing to chat and younger people are less so. Just interesting to see. Anyway, Art in Bloom is always a super fun experience. So why don't we just jump into it and take a look? So I have arranged these pictures in the order that we went to see them. So the first piece that we really saw was by these beautiful contemporary pottery, this Japanese pottery. There was a piece in a really artful vessel, which is an asymmetrical vase. It kind of looks like a barrel sort of shape, but it's ceramic and it has like green painted on it along with some brown designs and then a very sort of small arrangement on the side. And it is meant to have a conversation with the sort of larger vessel, the ceramic piece.
So in this particular case, the vessel looked as if it could be one of the ones that was on display. So that already linked it. And one of the things I liked was that the smallness of the flower arrangement sort of added to the heavy earthboundness of the whole arrangement. I think it would have looked wrong with huge things going up in the air or cascading down. I actually like this one very much.
Yeah, because the vessel in question is almost like a oval egg is sort of the best way I can describe it. It's very contained. And so the arrangement is similarly contained. And you and I talked a lot as we walked through it about what the expectation was of the floral arrangement. Is it meant to mimic it? Is it meant to be, in contrast to it? Is it meant to be something that, you could see the same person owning both pieces? Like, what is the point of it? And I mean, I think the bigger point is obviously to spark a conversation, but like, how are we deeming, we are not obviously the only arbiters, but how are we deeming things successful or not successful in your opinion?
Well, if I could not see this next to any of the other artworks in the room, and if I felt that it was, it made me, give me the same feelings, then I would judge it as successful. In my opinion, if the flower arrangement is too fanciful and too show-offy, it, in this particular case, it wouldn't have worked, because the ethos of the vessels is very quiet, very restrained. It's about subtle technique, and I feel like this flower arrangement does the same thing.
I have a similar but different take on it, which is to say, for me, the conversation is successful when the flower arrangement forces me to notice something about the artwork that I wouldn't have otherwise noticed.
Okay, so what did you
Right?
notice
It's
that you would
it's kind
otherwise
of
know?
like, well, I was going to say it's kind of like a wine pairing or something like that,
Yeah.
where the wine tastes better with the pairing than without. So for me, the thing that this enhances in the original art is there are two green leaves shooting out of the top of this arrangement at kind of an angle, and then in direct contrast there's an almost symmetrical painting of green on the vessel. And it made me look on, this is about the flower arrangements vessel. Now if I look at the original work of art, the kind of egg shaped vessel,
Uh-huh.
I now am just like much more hyper aware of the strokes of green paint on that. Whereas I think at first glance, and I'm pretty sure I walked past this piece in the museum a couple times, I was like, there's a white egg. There's a white egg. And this made me more aware of those green parts of it. And so I found some enjoyment in it bringing something to my attention that I hadn't previously paid attention to.
I will say also the compactness of the flower arrangement, along with the vessel, reflects sort of the dense feeling I get from the pottery on display.
So I think we're going a little bit slow in the beginning here, but we're going to speed up because we want to sort of get through it all. So this piece was new to me. It has the feeling of a diptych, even though it's a single piece, because there's sort of a hell inferno below. There's a clear divide in the painting. It's a square painting. The bottom half is kind of dark. On the card on the wall, I know we read that it was inspired by Picasso. And the top part of it is much lighter. It has kind of a cubist feel to it, I would say, although not strictly. And then the flower arrangement in front of it is in a kind of square brown basket. And I would say it's a somewhat symmetrically designed piece, although there are different flowers on the left and the right.
It's not bad. I actually think it's not bad, because
Mhm.
at first you think, oh, they were copying the colors, but they actually got this sense of movement, different flowers creating disparate parts, but somehow they all go together. And there are spiky little lilies. There are a few sticks coming out the top. I think they did a pretty good job, this one. It definitely, if you'd asked me to pick this out and say which item in the room was it meant to converse with, I would have picked this painting. Uh, the vessel is just a plain brown rectangle, which I guess is meant to mirror the fact that the bottom half of the painting is a rectangle. So in that sense, it's like not the same because it's flipped, right? But still, I liked it. I felt that this one communicated with me in a good way.
I don't like this one at all. I
Okay.
feel like for me, it doesn't capture. So I think I mentioned like this was inspired slightly by Guernica by Picasso, and like it doesn't capture the angles of it. There are so many circles in it, so many sort of soft edges. I wanted something harder. I wanted
Oh,
something more aggressive. I wanted something like the painting itself has kind of a feeling of shattering into shards for me,
mhm.
and this has too many curves and soft bits, and I don't know, it just didn't capture
Good
that part
point.
of it, and I don't think I learned anything new from looking at it, about the painting. It didn't
So
inform me.
mainly
Like, I found
it's
the
the
work
flowers on
hard,
the
but
left probably that are bothering you because they're very circular,
mm.
sort of chrysanthemums and asters, and it maybe the right captures more the feeling you want.
Yeah, the right side of this piece has more sort of like angular flowers that are kind of more tubey, and I think they're meant to mimic kind of the flames that are on there, and I assume the circles are more meant to represent the people, but the people in the paintings are still more angular, and I wonder if there would be more ways to get at that using sticks. I mean, I think other people and other arrangements did do some of that. So that's just my own. I don't feel like it's informing me about anything new. I'm not seeing anything new in the work here. Okay. This was one of the ones I remember at the time that you absolutely hated, which is it's a bowl that I think is called like jazz bowl. It's a blue bowl with is it a blue bowl with black on it or a black bowl with blue on it? I don't even know. But which way? It's a black and blue bowl. Very large. It has an inscribed design that's kind of in what I would call like an Art Deco-y style, kind of elongated shapes. And then the flower arrangement is in a shiny glass bowl. And then it is like lots of very bright colors, particularly I see the oranges and yellows. There are some purples in it. And then there's this kind of blue curly Q thing that sticks up from the top. I'm trying to think how to describe it. It's almost
Maybe it's a
like
piece of curly willow. It's a
mhm,
branch. It looks like a scribble in the air, and
yeah.
it's way above the arrangement. Now, here's one of the problems. The intense blue of the bowl is one of the features.
Mm,
I don't even see that color in the flowers, but mostly the bowl is wide on the top, and this
mhm,
flower arrangement is wide in the middle. The bowl
mm,
has a sense of design, whereas this flower arrangement on the right, to me, looks like something you might have in a restaurant, uh, meant to show opulence, but I don't. I also find it kind of disorganized, meaning too many colors,
mm.
too many parts. Uh, and the willow on top, the curly thing, why is it even there?
At first, I was like, well, maybe this arrangement is the kind of thing that this person envisions going in the bowl. And that's what I'm supposed to look at it as because it doesn't seem to represent the bowl itself in any way. The other thing is there's a kind of sophistication in the design of the jazz bowl. And like you said, I find the arrangement kind of garish in its color
Yeah,
choices, the very primary palette. It just doesn't have like any sophistication. I would have liked to see there's some beautiful lines in the bowl, and I would have liked to see maybe even some straight sticks instead of that curly willow to sort of represent some of that. I agree that the shape doesn't feel like the shape of the bowl, and it doesn't feel like the same person who owns or displays that bowl would have that arrangement. And like, I don't need it to be blue for it to represent the bowl, but I need it to um feel like they're sisters. They don't have to be twins, but I need them to be related. This is a picture of you
for
pointing at
scale,
the
I hope.
painting. Yes. So you're pointing at the painting and you can see this is just, I wanted to give a little bit of a sense of, so you can see how things are arranged. It's the regular museum collection as it's normally displayed. And here there's a painting above a chest. And then the flower arrangement is on a kind of nude pedestal next to the painting. The painting is of Lake George and has these kind of elongated figures. And I think I have a close up of
That's
the
great.
arrangement. And the what are those sort of plasticky Hawaiian flowers called? I can never remember.
Anthurium.
Okay. Okay. So there's these kind of those anthuriums which are very plasticky looking, and I think they're meant to represent there's a dock in the painting. And so they've been placed in a way that makes me think that the person is conscious of that part of the composition. And then there's these kind of pink, what are those? Dahlias maybe that
Maybe,
go up the side,
maybe
maybe
or
that feel like they're
afters.
kind of, representing people, or I don't know. And then it kind of, it's like slightly asymmetrical building to these kind of yellow, tall flowers with this draping greenery that goes down between them. And I think at the time, you and I agreed, but we can change our minds, that it didn't feel very much like the painting once you got past the kind of idea of, okay, that's supposed to be like a floating dock, because it didn't capture the feeling of like Lake George. What are your thoughts looking back on it now?
I'm changing
Or
my
it's Lake
mind because
Placid, not
the
Lake
picture
George.
picture is fun. It's a lot of people having fun. The picture itself is fun. There's a lot of motion and excitement and enjoyment and recreation. And actually, the chest that it's above is also the same. It's got the feeling of fun. And this flower arrangement gives me the feeling of fun. Everything is sort of uh, fanciful. Anthurium is a fanciful flower. The little spiky things on the little lilies or whatever on the top, that's kind of wacky. And the red brushy thing, a nod to the, is there a flag in the painting? Uh, I
Yes.
just feel like it's fun. I look at this and I feel I could hear music, even fairground music. And it has a sense of playfulness, which I think the painting also has. So I'm deciding I like this.
I have also changed my mind about this piece after looking at it. And this is another, like, people always say when you take pictures at a museum or a gallery or whatever, like, what are you going to do with those? And for me, I do like to go back and see, like, what was my second impression? How, when I'm not feeling other people staring at me, like, what is my experience of looking at it? Does it look different in the picture I took than it did in person? Do I, I just find them very useful as reference material. And here I can say that I now see in this piece how the yellow flowers capture the elongated figures in a way that I find really appealing. And that while it's not trying to be a one to one, like, this is the waves, this is the floating duck, this is the flag, it has the general idea of something that is like rocking and uneven and summer lushness and all that kind of stuff. So I also feel like in this flower arrangement, it gives me that thing of seeing something new. Like, I am hyper aware of the dock because of those pink flowers in a way that at first I might have looked elsewhere in the artwork.
It's, you know what? This arrangement is saucy. It's cheeky,
Hmm.
and so is the painting, and I like it.
Hmm. So this is a painting that as I recall the title, it was something about a tailor, or women at like a tailor, and it's these kind of I'm trying to think how to describe it. A woman who almost looks like a pea pod. They have these very narrowed bodies in which their feet come down into little points, and they are and their heads are in these kind of little hoods. So again, they have that kind of leaf or pea pod shape to their bodies, and they're in a kind of tent that's draped with fabric. And the arrangement is, I think, fairly unusual. I don't recall seeing an arrangement like this, and but it's three colored bowls of different colors. They're ceramic, then they're filled with kind of white flowers, and then there are calla lilies coming out of the center one in that kind of pea potty shape, and then all around each bowl has this draping of, I don't know what these flowers are. You're better at flowers than I am, Mom, but
I
they
don't
are sort
know,
of
but
a dark.
I looked at this
Mhm.
arrangement and I said to myself, why? The feeling I get from this flower arrangement is fairly funereal.
Huh.
Yes, it's static as the painting is, but it doesn't have any of the elegance that the figures in the painting have. It's just clumps to me. I don't even understand this flower arrangement, to tell you the truth. I feel looking at it that it emphasizes some of the things that I wouldn't like in a painting. It's too, I don't like the symmetry. 1, 2, 3, tall in the middle, those drapey things just really bother me. When you look at this flower arrangement, all you see is the drapey things, red, dark red,
So
which
the
is not
drapey
even
things,
a
I was
color.
just finishing describing. There are these flower chainy I don't know how else to describe it. They are like very long, almost like a woman's hair coming out of it, but these thick kind of red ropes of flowers that are like big and then come down to very little. Um,
This brings me to a question that we probably would be interesting to find out is, are the people who are arranging these flowers, are they trying desperately to use different floral materials than other people, and so they try to seek out some things and then create the floral arrangements, or do they figure out what effect they want and then go find the things that work for it? In other words, what's the order in which they put things together? This one makes me
mhm.
feel that the person was very concerned with using unusual materials. Because when you go for the art in bloom, you end up seeing that a lot of people are using the same floral materials, which is natural because only certain things are probably available or in season. To me, these red drippy things look like blood dripping down, and I just don't feel that at all when I look at the painting.
So it's interesting. The painting is very ordered and very neat and kind of clean, and the arrangement is kind of not at all that. But as I stared at this arrangement in person and I look at it here now, I think the thing that it is doing for the painting is I am very cognizant of the fact that the painting involves draping and fabric and things being hung over a form. And I'm not sure that looking at the painting, that part is like as crystal clear to me because it's so neat and clean and peapotty shaped everybody. And there's a kind of messiness about the arrangement that with all the draping that makes me feel that fabricy feeling, I guess, is the best way I can put it. But yes, not
Furthermore,
an
the
arrangement.
painting is not as symmetrical as the flower arrangement. The flower arrangement is
True.
completely symmetrical with the tall calla lilies in the very center. If you look at
Mhm.
the painting, the tall woman who's in the foreground, she is not in the center.
It's true.
And
There's some ideas here that I like, but it could be improved, shall we say.
and the different figures are dark and light, whereas
Mhm.
this flower arrangement is not. I don't feel that the two work together.
Okay, let's keep moving. So speaking of things that are fragrant, I snuck a photo in here of there was a we this is a picture of a Georgia O'Keeffe are they roses, I think? Some kind of like blue and white flowers. I think it's maybe orchids in the back and a rose up front. And then there's a larger arrangement in front of it, and there's a woman's head in the picture sniffing it. And I think the entire time we were standing there and I was trying to get a picture, she was smelling it, and it did smell great. But she really has her face in there. So it definitely gives you a different feeling about the art. I find sometimes for me, and don't come at me, please, I find Georgia O'Keeffe's work a little cold.
Uh-huh.
Like the flowers are somewhat sterile to me, partially because her painting style is very clean and simplified, and so the flowers feel very sterile. And in terms of having a live bouquet with the painting, it did make me more aware of the fact that they are alive and fleshy and scented and all that kind of stuff. Now, when we saw this, I think the exact quote from you was boring. Do you still feel that way?
Yes. Again, I get the feeling of a high-end restaurant or hotel lobby. Actually, that Georgia O'Keeffe that's behind it, that it's in
Mhm.
conversation with, I have noticed that a lot of institutions, like a hotel or a restaurant, for example, they like to put giant paintings, but non-representational. I mean, I know this is flowers, but you could also just see it as shapes. So perhaps the arrangement is in tune with the painting. I actually feel like the flowers do not do the painting justice.
Yeah, so it's a ton of white roses in a white vase with some white lilies, then some tall purple flowers and some sort of light pinker flowers coming out of it. I did feel a little bit like I would have liked an orchid or something in here as well, personally.
These are
The
all
paint.
mass flowers. I just would have liked something more sculptural.
I think it's lovely. I think they go together, and I think for me, like the thing that the arrangement brings out is just the remembrance that these are like real flowers. These are delicate, wilting things caught in a moment. So this was a juxtaposition of a cabinet. The cabinet is very fancy. It has
Inlaid,
inlay.
beautifully inlaid, all colors of wood. And
Really beautiful inlay, and the inlay is floral. And then the arrangement in front of it is in kind of like a metal, I'm calling it a bucket isn't fair, but it kind of is like a oval bucket, but decorative. And then it has lots of orchids and some, I think, calla lilies and some different
no calorie,
smaller.
please.
Yes, somebody who is actually is like a gardener or a flower person is going to kill me for not knowing any flower names, but I'm doing my best here. Here's a closer look at both the chest and the arrangement where you can see a little bit more of it. I believe at the time, one of the things that we discussed is that we said, well, I suppose the arrangement would sit on the chest very nicely, but I'm not sure that it feels like the chest.
Guess what? Again, I've changed my mind because
Oh.
the tendrils of branches that are going out with little tiny flowers on them, it sort of reflects the delicacy of the little legs that are on this massive chest. The flower, the color goes really well with the vases that they have on there, and it goes well with the wood. There's a natural feeling because these are not those bright, intense primary colors. They're
Mhm.
slightly grayish. I have decided I like this very much. And the vessel that it's in
Mhm.
reflects to me the handwork because you can see the chasing on the metal vessel. And
Mhm.
that goes with the idea of all the inlay, each piece of which has to be put in by hand.
Mhm.
So I've changed my mind and I'm a plus on this.
That's great. I mean, I think that I have definitely learned again that your first impression does not need to be your only impression. And that
Right.
sometimes it's important to give yourself time to get over whatever your expectations were and look at what you're actually presented. And that's true of your own artwork, it's true of lots of things.
Well,
So I remember
I'd
thinking,
actually
go
say one
ahead.
thing before you go away from this, which is the choice of the vessel is really
Mhm.
important here. And in some of the previous ones we've looked at, it's just a pot, you know,
Mhm.
it's just a pot like you would use for any arrangement. But this is a very particular kind of vessel and it echoes the feeling of this chest behind it. And I somehow feel like this is one of the better ones that I've seen.
That's great. I think it's a good reminder too that the pot, just like there are many sculptors who like to actually create the pedestals that their work will be displayed on because they are very particular. They realize that it becomes part of the art. And
Right.
so it's important to know exactly how it's going to be displayed. So
It
that's key
also
here too.
applies to frames around paintings.
It does. It absolutely does. Which we can talk about when we get to the Impressionist paintings, which we're just starting to do now. So this is a painting called The Birches. It is of, surprise, surprise, birch trees. There's like kind of a hidden riverbank. It's in the Impressionist style. These are very pretty birch trees, skinny, sort of splayed out. It's lots of greens and browns and natural colors. Then the arrangement that's with it also feels very wild to me. They have put, in fact, a large piece of wood into one side. It has some evergreen in it. It has some flowers. They've added some color, some sort of reds and oranges and some purples into it, and that I think are getting at some of the brown tones and the blues in the sky. What are your feelings about this pairing?
This is sort of a C plus B minus for me because I do feel it has the wild sort of riverbank feeling. However, the
Mhm.
bright oranges bother me because there's nothing like that at all in the painting. I think something green flowers, brown flowers, yellow flowers, tan flowers, because when we say flowers, they're using any kind of plant stuff. And I don't know what that purple thing is doing there. There's a totally
I felt that
vertical
was to represent the
swath.
sky, maybe.
I feel like this is a flat painting that could have used more grasses and leaves and less conventional flowers.
Okay, so for me, this is an interesting one. I also put it in the like B minus C plus category because it's pretty and like I would have it in my house and like it captures something wild and I do just naturally like the colors and all that kind of stuff. But when I look at it with the painting, I think it's missing the general conceit of the painting because there are two things about the painting that I think are important. One is that there are clearly two main trees, right? There's two main bunches kind of trees in this. And I don't find that there are two main bunches in this piece. I also will say that I think they're missing that, like if you just look at the incredible ornate frame it's in and the way that this painting has been treated, this is about like a very formalized version of something wild, a very contained version of something wild. And I feel like they have not captured the refinement that the framing of this piece gives those birches in the way that they've constructed this piece. It feels a little too
Right.
much like a grass field, like you could find it at
There,
the base of a tree.
there are several strong vertical lines in the arrangement, whereas
Mhm.
the painting, things are at an angle and slightly
Yes.
wiggly. The bank in the foreground is a very strong diagonal,
Mhm.
and that's missing from
And
the
there's a
flower.
horizontal in the flower arrangement. Yeah, I agree. I think it misses the mark. This is a close up of the arrangement just so that you can see it. I tried to take things from different angles. It's also just interesting to see how people are layering lots of textures. And again, like it's beautiful arrangement, but I'm not sure it captures the essence of the artwork.
It doesn't have the same movement that the artwork has. This one, I will just say this:
So
I
let's
liked it
describe it
so
before we
much.
talk about it.
In this case, the pot that it's in, the vessel that it's in, is very important. The painting is a painting of, let's say, promenade on in
Hmm.
carriages. The wealthy people are out for the daily showing themselves off to each other. It's sort of like the scene in the end of the movie Gigi, where the wealthy people are in their carriages, at the
Hmm.
same place, showing off their clothing and etc. And there's an elegant formality to it. And this U-shaped brown vessel is almost like it's a carriage, and in it are these fancy, fancily dressed, fancily adorned, bejeweled two things. Simple, aesthetically wonderful, angled toward the painting, so that you get the sense of formal, artful, thoughtfully arranged. Every single leaf, every single branch is pared down to its essence. People who know they're being looked at. Nature deliberately shown not to be natural.
This is more of like an ikebana style arrangement where everything has been very carefully thought, very carefully placed, like the angle of each branch has been put in. So the vessel is like a kind of rusty metal U is what I would explain it as. On one side of the U protruding from it are like three very much at peak, very perfect, very red roses. From the other side, it's almost like a small tree is growing out of it, but it's not. It's branches, a lot of greenery, and then a single white rose that comes up almost as if it's in a cage. And if we look back at the painting, the thing about the painting that's interesting is that there's a ton of empty foreground, which is just sand or stone or something very light colored. Then a kind of like crowd of horses, these green trees above it, and then the sky. And for me, what this captures is the idea of like the trees and the nature, then that kind of emptiness, and then the crowd of these little like flower people, or do you know what I mean, showing off underneath the trees, you know, who you are. And again, like this makes me see this painting differently. This forces me to think, oh yeah, carriages are cars. That's the whole rusty metal thing for me. And I could see a modernity in the painting that I didn't see at first because of the modernity of the vessel and the arrangement. I also now much more like it pushes forward even more the idea of that kind of preening, that kind of showing off, that, you know, the feeling of the piece is deeply enhanced, I feel like, by the flower arrangement, or my
Yes, the flower
understanding of it.
arrangement has a self-conscious refinement, which is also found, I think, in the people in the carriages dressed to the nines to show off. I like this so much.
Yeah, this was one of my faves. Okay, next up is a cliff in the on the edge of the ocean with trees and a little house on it. And then there is in front of it the arrangement, which is a very low arrangement set almost underneath. The painting is actually hung very low as well. So the arrangement was practically on the floor. It's mostly tight, almost like kind of an egg on its side, except that it has a couple protrusions. It is colored to me very much like the painting, with kind of greens and browns where the cliff and the trees are, and then it rolls into the ocean in kind of a blues and a purples. How do you feel about this one, Mom?
I like the painting more than I like the arrangement. The arrangement just doesn't, it's almost imitative. It doesn't enhance the painting at all. This is a landscape in nature with a sense of wildness in the trees on the left and the cliffs. And the flower arrangement has no sense of wildness to me. It is tamed, it is muted, it is also tiny, whereas the landscape is huge. You're looking at a distance, there's an ocean, there's a village, there's these wonderful trees, this, and there's sky. And then this flower arrangement is just some little dinky thing. You could put it in the middle of your coffee table. This is not a view of a coffee table. And so I don't get the expansiveness, the vastness of the landscape, which I think is one of the things the artist was trying to convey.
I agree that
I
it's missing the vastness. It feels too tight.
yeah, yeah.
It feels too contained. It feels too self-conscious. I would say whoever did it did a great job being a colorist. Like I can absolutely like almost one to one. Oh, that's that color. Oh, that's that color. Oh, that's that color. And like that's great. But it feels like, you know how they say that when you imitate somebody, you just do what they're doing, but not as good. That's what this feels like, is that it's like it's a copy but not as good as the original. And so you want something that is a companion, again, something that informs, something that helps you. You want, it's like that, you know people who are married to someone who makes them better, and you know people who are married to someone who does not make them better, and you always hope that you're married to someone who makes you better. Okay, here's a close-up of that arrangement so you can see that it's because it's hard in some of the faraway pictures. It looks a lot more contained. It looks a little bit looser in this picture where you can see all the different flowers that are making up those shapes and those contours. But it's also kind of like when you look at your artwork from far away and you look at your artwork from close, they both have to communicate, even if they communicate different things.
I'll tell you something else. That arrangement, if you,
Yeah.
I find that arrangement very feminine, and I find the painting very masculine. So those two things are at odds.
I just find the arrangement very tight, and I find the painting very loose. So here is a juxtaposition of two things. One is, it looks like a lamp to me. I can't remember the exact description on the card now. And it has some beautiful glass work that is blue and white. It has very rounded edges. I'm trying to think how else to
Tailor.
describe it. It's very tall and slim, with a sort of big bulbous head on it. And then the arrangement next to it is like a big block that then has a cage of flowers, a literal cage. Inside the cage are some red flowers, and then outside are these kind of blue flowers. What do you think of
I
this
find this
pairing?
imitative. It's too
Mm,
imitative. It's like, let me make a version of what this art object is. It's not even attractive to me. It's just like, what is this? This is some princess dream wedding item. I mean, it's just, it makes no sense to me.
I feel like I'm impressed by the skill and the creativity to create a cage out of flowers. Certainly something that I could not do, but I do feel that sense of like, but what is like, what am I learning new? What am I seeing anew about the lamp that I wasn't before the flowers? And I'm not sure I am seeing anything.
I find that the cage is just kind of crude compared to
Mm,
the skilled lamp. I mean, it just, the lamp has etching on it. It has places where it's beveled. It's beautifully made. It's on a base of three, sort of like steps of a pyramid. I mean, it's gold down there, which is an important element to making it seem
mhm,
elegant. And then on the top, where the lamp has sort of a delicate lip, this flower arrangement just has some little things sticking out that don't at all echo the curviness. You know, the one of the
mhm,
main features of this lamp is that it's very curvy. The whole thing,
mm.
except for the base, is curvy. And this flower arrangement, it has this one cage that is curvy, and then the top is not curvy, the base is not curvy. So it's not even a good imitation. I don't like it at all.
I need more, I guess is the way I would put it. Like I need this to tell me something about the piece. Okay, let's keep moving. So here is a picture of some ships, and it's a classic sunset sunrise picture, a kind of pinky sunrise. There are two very tall ships with white sails, a small boat in the foreground and a sort of medium boat in the dark edge of the foreground. The arrangement is in a gold bowl. The picture is also in a gold frame. The arrangement is very round. It has similarly that kind of hotel lobby to me feeling, a lot of greenery and then some beautiful blooms placed throughout. I'm certain that if I saw this arrangement, I would say it's a very attractive arrangement. I don't think it captures the picture. It does have a lot of the same colors, but the thing is, again, this is kind of like the birch tree conversation we had. There's two ships, they are very separated. There's a huge separation in the painting. The idea is not at all captured in the flower arrangement. And it's like, I want the flower arrangement to tell me something about the painting. I just see sort of like, oh, tall flowers that imitate sort of ship masts and then colors that are the same. I don't know. I'm not in love with this pairing. How do you feel about it?
Do you remember the notes? Was this a Dutch painting?
I
Because
don't think so. I think the Dutch painting's later. I think this is actually Boston Harbor.
Okay. All I know is one of the features of the painting, one of the focuses is the light,
Mm,
the atmosphere. This flower arrangement has no light and no atmosphere. And it is top heavy in a way that the painting is not. The painting is supposed to is glowing, and the flower arrangement just sort of sits there. I have to admit also I have a subjective dislike of gladiolas, and there are some spikes of gladiola sticking up, and I don't think they make a point at all. I know they probably were meant to imitate the ship masts, but they don't do it for me. And the other flowers just seem sort of random. And I think one of the things when you said it, color matching, one of the things I've noticed about these flower arrangements is the least successful are the ones which are purely based on color imitation. In other words, and then there's a, brown thing over here, so there's a brown thing in the flower arrangement. That is the least successful form because it's not creating a conversation, it's just creating an imitation. And I also don't know why I I don't think that gold vase does anything for it. I think the bottom of the painting is dark, is heavy. The water is heavy, and then most of the rest of it is heavens, which are light, which are suffused with the
mm.
sun, which wind and airy. And this this done doesn't give me any of that.
So not a winner. So here's another picture of you. So here we're looking at a picture of a boy singing, a painting of a boy singing. He has a feather in his cap. He's wearing very opulent, shiny fabrics, so voluminous fabrics. And the piece, the flower artwork, is a kind of these dusty colored roses, these kind of feathery accoutrements in it. It's got some leaves up in the back,
Yeah,
and
are they tea
it's
leaves or something? They're brown.
purple. Yeah, sort of like purple flowers, some yellowy whites, and then the vessel to me, as I recall, was ceramic, but it's also brown. How are you feeling about the relationship between this flower artwork and the
I
painting on
imagine
the
that the
wall?
three brown tea leaves or whatever they are that are pointing up are meant to be his hand, which he has
Mm,
raised, but the size is out of proportion. Um, I do not like this one. For one thing, I don't relate to the purple flowers because where is that kind of purple in the painting? What
I
I
think it's meant
also
to be
see,
the dark blue is the purple, but
yeah,
yes, I see it.
the shininess of the fabric of the clothing he's wearing is one of the features of the painting, and I don't see the shininess reflected. I also think the arrangement is clumpy, and it is not a clumpy painting. The feathery cap is part of why it's not a clumpy painting. There's it gives a feeling of sort of the music coming out, and I don't feel any music from this flower arrangement. It just sits there. I'm a no on this one.
I think I'm this to me is also like a B kind of job. Like I see all the effort, I appreciate all the effort, I acknowledge all the effort, but the in the end, again, like I'm just not sure what it tells me about the artwork that I wouldn't have otherwise felt about it. I sort of have a moment where I'm like, oh, these flowers are feathery. That's cool. And oh, look, this is kind of like a hand. That's neat.
I feel like this is a more modern arrangement than the time of the painting, and
Definitely.
it's jarring for me.
It's interesting because I feel like the clothing that he's wearing and all of that is meant to display some level of opulence, of wealth, of something like that. And I don't feel that the arrangement does that. These don't feel like fancy flowers. Like I think I would have liked something that felt a little fancier.
Where's
Okay.
the feeling of the book too that was in his hand? I
Mm,
mean, it's just
hmm.
it's missing. I don't relate to that at all. Okay, who are these
Okay, so this
guys?
piece is Dutch. This is a painting of a man and a woman. The man is standing. I almost said looking at the camera, but he is in fact looking at the painter, at the at you who are out there, and the woman is too. She's wearing a wide neck ruff, and she has a kind of velvety looking skirt on, and it is in a very gilded gold frame. The arrangement is a very tall arrangement placed on a pedestal that is quite tall. The human being in the picture I do not know, but was a normal sized human being, and you can see does makes it about maybe halfway up the arrangement. It's in a tall box like vessel, and then it has a lot of red and purple calla lilies spraying
Dripping
out
down,
from it and dripping
beautifully
down
draped.
along a lot of white lilies, some of which have not opened yet, a significant amount, in fact, which have not opened yet. And then these, I think, tall, curly, curvy branches coming out the top.
All
I
right,
had a lot of trouble figuring out how this related to the painting when I first saw it. And I think for me, this one is trying to capture the mood, which is somewhat stormy.
I will tell you what I think. So,
Mm,
in this time in the Netherlands, you were not supposed to show off your wealth, so they did show it off. And the way they show it off is like the expensive lace in their clothing. Both of them are wearing expensive lace. This is probably a couple. And they're showing how rich they are by the little subtle things that they are wearing and touching and standing in front of while still pretending to be modest about it. And uh, I get the feeling from this flower arrangement that it's the idea of the abundance of the flowers. Look, we have a lot. We have a lot of money. And the white lace on the top is the white flowers. Lace was incredibly expensive in those days. So only really wealthy people would have that much lace. And what you see here is like we are overflowing with the good things in life, but we're keeping it restrained so you can't accuse us of showing off. But we know, and you know that we know, and I like it. I think it reflects something real. These are not
I see that.
little skimpy flowers. These are overflowing lilies at the bottom that are draping all over like a skirt would or a robe would. And it's massive the way the column of the house is behind them
Hmm.
in the photograph of their painting. I just feel like they are it's a way of showing off. It's like when
Hmm.
you make a flower arrangement that's just like 500 roses or something.
Right,
It's not the fact that it's a rose, it's the massing of so much. Well, that's what
right.
this flower arrangement is doing. It's showing so much, and you can't possibly walk away without thinking how rich it is. And that's frankly one of the one of the points of this painting.
Yeah, I see now also how much the vase mimics that pillar in the back, and I really like
Yeah.
that too. Okay, next up is this is a small Rodan. I think it's a maquette, probably of a larger piece, I'm going to assume, or maybe it's a casting of a larger piece, but it's a man, very muscular, partially draped, standing over, I think, an animal of some kind at his feet. And then there's another man draped over his shoulder that he is carrying, and like a baby or an angel or something falling down the back. The arrangement is a kind of oblong vessel with a small foot. It is filled with like a sea of flowers, and then emerging from it is a very sculptural vertical, and then a sort of a curved arm of white orchids extending out of it, and then there are some purple flowers also coming straight up around it. How do you feel about this pairing?
I like it. The spray of orchids is very muscular,
Mhm.
and the strong vertical sort of echoes the strength of the primary figure. And the shape of the vessel is kind of classical, sort of like could be classical Greek or Roman, that kind of feeling, and uh, gives you a sense of being rooted in the earth, which they are, the two figures are. And I sense that the little green is sort of a nod. First, it cuts through all the white, which I think is important for the flower arrangement. And it's also a nod to the earth, because there is a sense of these people. Where are they? I think they're out somewhere in a meadow, on a mountain somewhere that is not urban. And I think they've done a good job. They didn't mimic the statue, but they gave you the feeling, the strong feeling. This statue is about strength, human strength. And this flower arrangement gives you the feeling of strength. And the strength of the orchid branch, the strength of the verticals. I really like it.
I do too. It gives you that strong, soft feeling that I think like some good classical sculpture always gives me, which is I look at it and I think, oh, it's so draped, it's so lush, it's so, corporeal, it's so all those things. And then you're like, wait, but it's hard as a rock, it's stiff as stone, it's rigid and yet soft. And I think that this arrangement captures that rigid but soft feeling.
Yeah, I think this is successful.
So this one is a woman playing, I believe it's a lute. It's a like
Yeah.
yeah, it's a guitar that's kind of more ovally elongated. So I think it's a lute. And she has an off the shoulder dress. She's kind of in like a white gray color. The painting is very much painted in neutrals. She does have a rosy cheek, and it's in a gilded gold, very fancy frame. The flower art is white and pink with greenery. There are some large, are they pussy willow branches? Maybe I think that have been curved to kind of represent the lute shape. I took another angle so you could see the kind of curved looping pussy willow branches again here. What do you think of this pairing? I will say
All
up
right.
front that I dislike the
Yeah.
arrangement enormously, but I'm trying to
Well,
disassociate
I
my
don't love
dislike of
the
the arrangement.
I don't love the arrangement, but I see exactly what point they're trying to make. This is a painting which is emphasizing the sexuality of this woman. I don't remember the card, but she is entertaining someone who is not in the painting. She's lush. Her bosom is half out, her shoulder is half out, which would be shocking. Her cheeks are all pink. She's youthful, and she's very, very feminine. Look at the way her wrist is on the lute. What I would say is this flower arrangement reflects that hyper femininity, and the pussy willow branches not only are they curved, like her curves, but also they're buds. Her sexuality is budding. We are seeing that. And then the white and pink, I don't think it's the right flowers, particularly the white flowers. I don't think they're right because they're stiff, whereas I think they should be more flowing. But I do understand that the designer of the flower arrangement wanted to emphasize her young ripeness as a woman, her being on display for some man, I think. Maybe the pussy willows also, the branches, maybe that's the music that she's making. So I don't love the arrangement. I wouldn't even look at it if it weren't next to this painting, but I do think it has some valid points to make about the painting.
I can see that. I wish that the bent pussy willow branches came out more from the middle than from the back, that they were somehow more integrated than kind of a background to it, that they were more necessary to the arrangement. I feel like there's a definite feeling of like she is taking up maybe a third of the canvas. It's a horizontal canvas, and there's a lot of space that's dedicated to the lute case, like everything else that's in the painting. And I feel like I would have liked that juxtaposition, whether it was like greenery on one side or something, and so that the flowers become more precious, more special. It's almost like too much flowers. Like to me, that doesn't represent the painting, which is very much like her as a flower among the rest of it somehow. So it doesn't it misses the mark for me, and I'm trying to disassociate that from the fact that I don't like the arrangement just in general. I just don't like it.
Well, I'll just say that part of the reason this painting exists is to show her pulsating sexuality. She
Mhm.
may even be, a prostitute. I think the idea of the flower arrangement is supposed to be conveying pulsating sexuality. I don't think it does it well because I think the flowers are, again, are too stiff, particularly the white ones. But I understand the motivation of the designer here.
Mm. So this was a statue in which the statue has one arm down and one arm up, and the arrangement that's next to it is in a white vase that is definitely like a sculpted clay vase, and then it has very stylized, very formal orange flowers, and it has curly branches going down and curly branches going up. The scale of both the arrangement and the statue are quite large. I included a photo for those of you who are looking at photos on YouTube, of mom with both, so you can see scale wise how big it is. You're kind of looking up at both of them. The robe on the statue is in that kind of orangey yellow hue. How did you feel about this?
I like this a lot. I think the flowers, a lot of them are proteas. So those are
Mhm.
very stiff but exotic looking. There are some calla lilies in the same colorway. The whole emphasis on this arrangement is this diagonal that goes from top left to bottom right. And I think that echoes the movement of the statue and the way you look at the statue. You're standing on the ground, you look up to see the very top, what's in her hand, and then you follow down her body down to the ground. So that's the same movement that you do with this flower arrangement. You look at the top, you follow those willows, and then through the where the flowers are, and then the willows that come out on the bottom. I think it's a very successful way of addressing this. The rigidity of the proteas is kind of interesting because this is a sculpture. It's actually, as you said before on a previous one, very hard and solid and nothing that moves, but it looks like almost that it could move because it's well done. I think this works beautifully.
I agree. I like this one. I think that the sort of left to right thing is really on, and I appreciate the stiff formality of it because I find this to be a slightly stiff sculpture. And so that works for me. This was a small, I don't want to call it a shrine, but it is a religious piece of art. Jesus is on the cross in the back, and there's some kind of, forgive my lack of knowledge of religion, religious figures on the doors of it. So next to it is a bowl of flowers. It has those red waxy Hawaiian, I keep calling them Hawaiian flowers because that's where I normally see them
Yeah,
actually growing.
anthuriums.
More calla lilies must be in season because they're in everything, but here we have some yellow calla lilies. Then we have some purple flowers coming out, and I would say overall the shape of the design is kind of diamond shaped, is the best way that I can think to put it. The shrine, the religious art in question, is shaped like a little house with a arched opening, and so when the doors are open, which is it's in the open display in the case, it's like two little wings that come out from this house shape with these kind of arched edges.
I do not like it. For one thing, one of the major features of this piece of art is gold. There is
I was just
nothing
going to say
gold.
that. I was just going to say
Well,
that. I think
I
the
beat you
blue
to it.
might be gold.
So you I think I'm missing the gold. I also think the flower arrangement itself is uninspiring. Not even talking about its relationship with the art piece. It's just uninspiring. It looks like a sort of, when you look through a web page to send flowers to someone who lives far away, and they have a whole bunch of flower arrangements to look at, but they mostly are not inspiring. This one seems to me to be trying to imitate the colors that are in this art piece, but without any real thought. It just, and furthermore, if you look at this, the figure on the far right is sort of white and tan or something,
Yeah,
and there's
I don't think
it
it
just
captures
doesn't
anything
make it.
about the art.
They could have
What do
used
you
a
think of
golden. They could have used something that came to a triangle at the top, or because there's a pointiness about the
Mhm.
top, whereas it doesn't. I don't understand. Everything seems widely distributed, evenly distributed in this bowl, whereas it's not in the artwork. There's no architecture to this flower arrangement. It doesn't at all. If you put it down, I would never pick this artwork to be the inspiration for it. And
There's a lack of storytelling in the art, in the flower arrangement.
yes, I think that's right. And the central figure of Jesus on the cross, emotionally, it's the heart of the story that the artwork is telling. I don't see it
Mhm.
anywhere
Mhm.
in the floral arrangement. All the
Yeah.
minor less prominent figures are the bright red, the bright yellow, the bright blue.
Mhm.
I think also there's a faded quality to the artwork, and the flowers in the arrangement are very primary and bright, almost Crayola like. So to me, they don't relate at all.
Yeah, I think again, this goes to like most religious art was designed to tell a story. It was designed to help illiterate masses understand the stories and the religion and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, the flower arrangement lacks so much any sense of story, any sense of anything, because it's so generalized. Like everything is arranged kind of evenly and distributed evenly, and it doesn't feel like it's saying anything. So I think that's tough about it. But we have been talking for a very long time, and this is why this is a two-parter. Maybe we should have made it a three-parter. But we'll be back next week to talk some more about art in bloom, to share some more photos, to share lots more opinions. I want to remind you that Practical Color for Painters is ongoing. People are joining class every week, so don't be shy. You're not too late. Color is a foundational part of making art, so join me for a wonderful interactive workshop that breaks all of the complicated ideas down into simple and practical lessons. If you want to connect, you can find me at juliebalzer.com or all over social media as at Balzer Designs. Please sign up for the free weekly newsletter. That's the best way to make sure you keep up on the latest news. There's a big button on the homepage of juliebalzer.com where you can do that, or you can go to the show page for this podcast to find the link, or if you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description. If you'd like to help the show, you can leave a review. You can mention us on social media. You can tell a friend. You can leave a comment, because all of those things help other people find the show, which helps us so much. So thank you so much for listening and subscribing. We will see you the next time on the Adventures in Arting podcast.